we are on treble watch. Not just for one team, for 4 different teams in Europe with an opportunity to get a treble. It's Arsenal, never had a treble. Barcelona, last time they had one, 2014, 2015. Inter Milan, last time they had one, 2010. And Bayern, 2020, the last time they were able to win 3 trophies in one season. Let's go through some of these teams, see if they actually have a shot. Start with Arsenal. Arsenal, many would argue, maybe the best team in the world right now. It's difficult, though, for them because I feel like the Premier League is so heavy. To win that Premier League after all of the close calls for the past several years, that focus needs to be paramount for them, that it's almost like the treble may not be a priority because they need to win the Premier League. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's sort of progression. They have to take a step. And the next step for them and their development over the last 5 or 6 years is to win the Premier League. However, I do think that if we were talking about any other club that has had the success that they've had so far this season, if Real Madrid had a season like Arsenal have had so far, we'd say, yeah, go win the treble. Barcelona, the big clubs. It's because Arsenal don't have the experience of winning the Premier League for more than 20 years, and they've never won the Champions League before, that we kind of talk about them in this way. I think in some ways, if I were a fan, I would feel constrained. I would feel limited if someone is telling me, well, it's all about the Premier League. No, the Champions League is a massive deal. Not you don't see a lot of English clubs going and winning it in general. But in particular, Arsenal have never won it before. I would absolutely be going all out. But I think to that point, the biggest thing they could do is establish a gap. If they could get a gap going, and this is why some of the drop results that they've had of late, I think would be a little bit frustrating for them. Yes, they remain 6 points clear. But you think about that draw against Nottingham Forest. They could be 8 points clear had they won that game. If they get to the real business end of the Champions League and they're 11, 12 points clear, then I think you can really start to think about the other competitions. But yeah, they'll have to maintain some level of focus. But I think the question is not necessarily should they think about it. The question is, can they do it? And it just does look a bit sometimes where the schedule gets crazy. I mean, they could honestly think about a quadruple. They're into a Carabao Cup final. They're still in the FA Cup as well. They could realistically think about a quadruple. But it really is just sort of about one thing at a time, because otherwise we've seen Man City kind of entertain this idea of going and win a quadruple in the past, and then they blow one of them. So I think they have to think about just the next thing. But they're good enough to do it. I really think so.
For sure. If they can stay healthy, especially on that back line, their defense has been the best in Europe. If they can stay healthy and get that back line to continue to perform this way, they absolutely can win a treble, and like you said, maybe even 4. We talk about that, right? We talk about Arsenal as a team that we don't really see them as being able to go out and win all of these because they haven't done it. Barcelona is one of these teams that we say, yeah, they can go and do it. Barcelona at the top of the table in La Liga. We know the stars that they have, and we know that they're always going to be competing for the Champions League. Can they do it this season?
We'll find out on Friday that they drew Atletico Madrid in the semifinal of the Copa del Rey. I think they could beat Atletico over 2 legs. I think that's probably a competition they can go and win. I trust them at this moment to be more consistent game after game than I do Real Madrid in league play, although it's only 1 point. And we've seen Barcelona slip up. The thing for me that's interesting is I think this year's Barcelona is worse than last year's. And so I think that last year, the way that they were performing, the way that they played in that Champions League, I thought that they could have gone and done it last year. I'm not so confident this year. I think that there's just something a little bit off about that Barcelona team. They just don't quite have that same level of spark for me going forward. Maybe they'll rediscover it in the second half of the season, but I just don't quite feel the same way about this Barca team this year that I did last year. Last year, I thought they were scintillating. Maybe it's because of the newness of it, but I think they were scintillating. They were entertaining. Hansi Flick had this incredibly enterprising and adventurous style of play. I just don't feel that same way about this team. So I think they can absolutely win 1 or 2, but I don't think, ultimately, when we're entertaining this conversation, we're talking about generational level teams. That Bayern team under Heinkes was absolutely incredible. The Inter team under Mourinho, the treble-winning side of Manchester City, the treble-winning side. We're talking about, Luis Enrique, Lionel Messi scoring, hundreds and hundreds of goals. I just don't think this Barca team is that.
I would argue that they aren't scoring at the rate, obviously, that they were scoring at last year. But I would argue that defensively they're a bit better, not conceding as many goals as they had at this point last season. Again, though, it really does come down to that. It really comes down to the Champions League because, look, yes, they're only 1 point ahead of Real Madrid. They've been a better team than Real Madrid this season. I agree. And maybe they'll feel hard done by only being 1 point ahead. I still have confidence that they will go and win that. I think the Champions League it's kind of in their bogey now for quite some time.
10 years now.
Getting eliminated just in the semifinals or in the quarterfinals. And I think that's where they're going to have to go forward. And they need to get to that level attacking-wise, I think, to have that opportunity to win a treble and to win the Champions League for sure. Let's head over to Bayern Munich. We just mentioned them after they won that treble several years ago. For me, even though they have been a bit, maybe not at their top form as of late, for me, this is still the team that I think has the best chance to win the treble. If they get everyone going at their highest level, I don't think anyone's stopping them. In my opinion, attacking-wise, they're incredible.
Certainly, I think they're the team from a league title standpoint that has it the most sealed. They're definitely going to win the Bundesliga. The question is about the cup competitions. And by the way, we don't really mention the Pokal as much, but they have not been a great Pokal team the last few years. And one of these teams that's been susceptible to the upsets. They played Leipzig in the quarterfinal. I think they can beat them. I think what you mentioned, which is they just haven't been at their brilliant best in the last month or so, since the winter break in Germany. They just haven't been quite as good. Harry Kane hasn't scored quite as many goals. Michael Olise has been awesome, but I still think in the overall, they're now reintegrating Musiala back into the team, which I think will be a little bit of a reorientation as to how they play. I think if they can get back to playing as well as they were in November and early December before that winter break, I agree with you. I think this is a team that can go all the way. I've been kind of telling everyone around here that I think Bayern's going to win the Champions League this year. But I think in the last month, I'm a little bit more doubtful of that position. I think they can absolutely go and do it. Obviously, they're right there in sort of that top two to get a favorable draw and route to at least the quarterfinal. But I still am a little bit dubious of this team at the moment. They're definitely going to win the Bundesliga. I think on their best day, I think they're the best team in Europe. I think they're even better than Arsenal on their best day, just in terms of the threats and the way that the attack gets deployed. But I don't think we've seen that often enough in recent times.
I mean, it's fair. I still think that once they get Musiala going, Olise, like you said, has been fantastic. And Harry Kane, he's going to get back in the goals. I mean, he's getting the chances. He's just not putting them away at the rate that he was at the beginning of the season. So I still do believe, in my opinion, that is my pick. I have also said that I believe Bayern will win the Champions League. Still a lot to go, but I do think that they have the best chance, in my opinion.
And as ever, it depends on the draw. We know that their path can be a little bit straightforward, but it'll depend on the teams that they get, where they're at in those times of the year, and those are the vagaries of the Champions League. If they get an unfavorable draw, I could easily see them losing to one of the other top sides in Europe.
In Italy last season, we talked a lot about Inter leading up to that Champions League final with an opportunity to win a treble. The depth, and they really just kind of ran out of gas, essentially, Inter did. This is a different Inter side now. They do have a little bit more depth. They've integrated some younger players. They have some players to be able to rotate, not having to play the same 11 week in, week out. The job Kivu has done has been fantastic. What do you think about their chances to win 3 trophies?
I think some of it, again, is also about the draw for them in the Champions League. They play Bodo Glimt, and then being in that 10th position, you could play a reasonably strong team in the next round. But I think in Serie A, I mentioned this earlier in the show, I think they're the best team in the league. I think they probably should win the league by at least 8 or 9 points. I think they could easily be that kind of dominant. The question is, in Coppa Italia, in the next round they face either Napoli or Como, the thing that is the biggest worry for them is the record that we've talked about ad nauseum, the record in big games. In the Champions League, it was Arsenal, it was Liverpool, it was Atletico. They lost all 3 of them. In Serie A, it's Juventus, it's Inter, it's Napoli, where they have struggled to get positive results in those games. If you can't beat the big teams, and that's your sort of one biggest criticism, the Champions League just doesn't seem like the kind of competition where you can right that wrong. And I think in general, the Inter side, I think, hit a little bit of the end of a cycle under Inzaghi, with him going and some of the older pieces that you mentioned leaving the team. I think they're starting a new cycle. I think Champions League for them, it's a bit early. I think I've been blown away in terms of how well they've played in Serie A. I think they have exceeded expectations on the basis of the managerial change, on the basis of some of that player change that you mentioned, which could easily have gone wrong. They're a well-placed team. They could easily win the Scudetto. They could go on to win Coppa Italia. I think the Champions League is a step too far for them this season.
That's fair. And again, this is a team that, we mentioned it last year, they came close, but they just couldn't get across the line. I do think it's a better side this year. This Inter team, I think, is a bit better than last year, just because they have more options, and they're going to be fresher at the end of the season, obviously pending injuries, if they're able to keep this group together and keep fighting for all of these trophies. But definitely a good season for them, and definitely looking to get some silverware after being shut out.
I guess the overall question is, are any of these teams going to do the treble?
I think Bayern. I think Bayern has the best chance.
Do you think Bayern going to do it?
I think Bayern has the best chance.
Okay. I'm going to say no trebles this year in European football.